Hello, Maud. This is Ray Bone, your lobbyist. I just wanted to take a few minutes and update you as to what we believe is going on at the Capitol and the direction we're headed. I just spent 3 hours watching the Senate, full Senate, in session, and they were dealing with some topics that really didn't affect us at all. But anyway, they they're not playing so nice together anymore. They seem to be quite willing to take one another on some issues, and they're also seem to be the bipartisanship is breaking down a bit in that process, and uh, I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few minutes. But what I wanted to talk about first was the budget, because the budget is really coming to the forefront. Their legislators, both in the House and Senate, have widely acknowledged that there is no surplus anymore. The $1.5 billion surplus has evaporated along with the virus. I've heard a couple of presentations by Commissioner Myron Franz from the Management and Budget Office, and the things look pretty dire in terms of a budget. The question, I think, right now, the immediate question is, will the budget be balanced at the end of this fiscal year, which ends June 30th? And then what about the future after that? A lot of questions. They don't have the information yet. The department doesn't make any kind of legitimate forecast. They're hoping to be able to do that in May, make a budget forecast, and it's not going to be pretty. I can guarantee you that. I think the hope is that they will not have a deficit to deal with in June. That's all I can say is everybody should cross their fingers on that one because I don't know how realistic that is. We'll know more in May, and hopefully they can get a chance to deal with some of those issues prior to adjourning on May 17th. But I really don't think it's going to matter much when they adjourn. I believe that we're either going to have one very long special session throughout the rest of the year to deal with all the policy and budgetary issues that are going to be before the state of Minnesota and the legislature and the governor, or they're going to have a series of special sessions to deal with those issues. But I think um, the virus is frankly long from over. I see this thing going into August and September and October before we really get total clearance on it. And then they're talking about a second um, a second wave coming in October, September, October. So I mean, who knows how this thing is going to play out, but it's not good. The problem with the deficit this fiscal year, the one that ends June 30th of this year, is it really doesn't give the agent or the agency or the governor much of a chance to start reducing spending. Um, they only have literally a month left by the time they get this forecast. And if I had any kind of money in any dedicated accounts in Minnesota, in Minnesota state government, I would be very fearful that they're going to have to come in on June 30th and just sweep all the accounts and take any money that's available, at least on a short-term basis, and use it to cover any potential deficit we may have. But hopefully, we won't be faced with that. But I'm not optimistic about that. The longer-term budget we can deal with. One of the problems the Department of Management budget has right now is they don't know what they're dealing with totally on the federal level. I think they got a handle on the numbers, but I think the guidelines are slow in coming from the federal government. That's going to tell them how they can spend that money that the feds are giving them. So anyway, it's a long ways to go, and hopefully by the middle of May, in the next couple of weeks, we'll know better what's going to happen. But the way it is right now, we're under 4 weeks in how to deal with some of these issues. So, of course, that's till the end of session, but I don't think the end of session is going to mean, in the end, mean much. But anyway, the House is working on the LCCMR bill. They're trying to get that money spent. It's like $61 million, I think, is the total now. We have some watershed districts that have funding coming out of that, so hopefully they'll get that moved. We're not seeing any movement on the legacy bills. One of the problems the legacy bills have is that they're funded with state sales receipts, and frankly, I don't think they have any idea how much money they're going to have in that account over the next 2 years. So I think that's going to have to be put on the back burner, both that and the Clean Water Fund, until they figure out how much money they've got. Because I think it's that serious. They really need to figure that out before they start passing bills spending that money. And I just don't see that happening. I don't know how they could do it responsibly at this point. Because I'm sure those forecasts are going to shrivel quite a bit. The GOP in both the House and Senate, the Republicans are really starting to put pressure on the governor's stay-at-home order. But he is starting to listen to some of that, and he is opening things up a bit. You probably heard over the weekend. But what's going to he's allowing the restaurants to sell beer and to sell a bottle of wine with takeouts, that sort of thing. But I think we're going to see a bit more opening up this week. He's going to make some announcements this week, and we'll have to see what he thinks. He's largely working with the other governors in the Midwest and also with the federal government. So appears to be able to maintain his relationship with the president, and I think that's always helpful. So I guess we'll just have to just keep watching things. I mean, the last thing we want, as you know, is to open things back up again, and we're get right back in the duck soup with a whole bunch of virus-related deaths and have to close things down again. So that's I think a very real possibility if we're not very careful. And I do think the governor's been watching that very carefully. So Senator Gazelka at the end of session today did announce that he intends on doing a bonding bill. He said there will be a bonding bill this year. A lot of the legislators are talking about the bonding bill in context of a stimulus package. It's really the only thing the state can do to stimulate employment or stimulate the economy, and boy, it sure looks like we're going to need that. So I actually think that we may actually see a bigger bonding bill than the like 1.2 billion that I was originally thinking. I think it could reach upwards 1.8, maybe 2 billion, because they're really going to have to do some things to open things up. And with the interest rates as low as they are, I don't know that there's going to be that much additional cost. Of course, when you do a bigger bonding bill, one of the things you have to factor in is that someone's got to pay the debt service, and that's obviously the state. So the question is, how much does that add to the budget burden? And I guess someone that's got a lot more numbers than I have will have to figure that one out. But I do actually see that we may have more of an opportunity. For example, in our flood hazard mitigation arena, we may actually have a chance of getting some additional money, although the DNR doesn't seem to think that we need it right now. But I would strongly disagree with them, and as does the Red Board. So anyway, we've been working closely with Lisa Fournette and Rob Sipp on the flood hazard mitigation, both from the Red River Valley and statewide, trying to get as much into that fund as we can so that we can deal with some of our ongoing flooding issues. Have not really heard much on policy bills at all. So I don't see a lot of policy. There were a few things, minor things today. There may be a few things moving, but if they're not on the floor already, it's going to be pretty hard. It's going to be hard to pass things through committees, although they are working on it and they are passing some things through committees. But it's pretty laborious with the with the doing roll calls and things like that. They really have to. It really takes a lot of time, and the way that they're separated, even in the floor action, they're spread all over the Capitol. And in the Senate, they come down to vote. In the House, they don't even come down. They just kind of phone it in. So anyway, and some are still at home, but it seems to be working. I mean, it works. It's just a little slower, but it does work. And fortunately, they decided to go that route. Taxes. Gazelka did mention taxes, and he said that they're trying to figure out some kind of tax relief. God only knows what that will be, considering the budget issues. I know there's a lot of discussion about delaying the property tax due dates, and things like that. I know the counties actually have been having a lot of discussion with the legislators about what they can do to maybe delay some of the property tax payments. And we're hearing a number of different strategies. Some are just saying, well, just push it back to July 15th. Others are saying June 15th. Some are saying that, well, we won't push it back, but we will waive all penalties before, as long as they pay by July 15th. So there are a number of things that's going on there now. I know that the counties have been told from their statewide association that they should be working with their political subdivisions that they collect money for, and obviously that we'd be included in that. So I think if you haven't been in contact with your counties, I think it would be wise to contact them and see what they're thinking in terms of property tax abatements and obviously cash flow has got to be something you folks need to be looking at. And I think if you have some concerns, also collections, that sort of thing, I think those are issues. And some counties are really looking at this very seriously. So I guess if I were you, I'd encourage you to talk to your counties and see what they're thinking and make sure you get your input in there. I know many of you all have reserves and could handle some things, but bottom line is you got to make sure you get that revenue coming in. Otherwise, you'll have to close your doors as well. We're down to less than 4 weeks of this session. But again, I don't think that's a pivotal date, because I frankly believe that we're going to have a series of either mini sessions or one long special session throughout the summer and going into the fall. So I'm not making any travel plans at this point. Well, with that, I think that pretty much concludes my update. And certainly, if you have any questions, just drop me an email. I know these are really confusing times, and just a lot of sitting around and waiting right now. We can do some follow-up on some issues, but we're just going to have to wait and see what the legislature in the end decides on some of these issues and what the governor decides. So with that, I'm going to close for now, and we'll be talking to you again in a few weeks. Thank you.